Thank you everyone for joining us today. And as I said, this is the second of two webinars we've held. So my name is Neil Ebenezer, and I'm an independent consultant working with DT Global to help run this competition. I'm joined today by Saviti Pabari and Jerome Rich from DT Global. And what we'll do is, if we can go to the next slide, we'll provide an introduction to the Transport Technology Research and Innovation Grant System for International Development. And we'll talk through the process for research themes, the process for applications, I should say, using the portal, and then touch on some of the areas of what you'll need to do to agree the finance steps, and then dates and deadlines for you to note. And at the end of that, we'll have a Q&A session. And so at the bottom of your Zoom box, you'll see a Q&A button. If you can add any questions that you might have as the presentations run, and then we'll address that at the end. So we go to the next slide. So we have the, next slide, please. So we have TRIID, as I said, the Transport Technology Research and Innovation Grants for International Development. And this is a program of work as part of the High Volume Transport, or HVT, Applied Research Program. And this is a 7-year project that's been running with over £18 million invested by the UK Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, or FCDO. And it's to undertake research into the sort of areas of transport, looking at abilities to reduce barriers to innovation and advanced transport technology in low and middle income countries, enable a better transport system, maximize opportunities that have the potential for further development, and to fund early stage innovations that have the potential to be taken to the next stage of development. And we've previously run these TRIID competitions in 2018, I think was the start. And then over the COVID-19, there was a response and recovery transport fund that was using the same mechanism of identifying innovative transport-related research. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the scope of the call, the first thing to say is that it is really open to all. So it's open to any company or organization of any size based anywhere. But it is preferable to partner with a low to middle income country. But the research or outputs from this work that we fund must be applicable to the LMICs. So we're looking at novel or innovative solutions that use science, engineering, or technology, focus on FCDO's priorities. But we're also looking for, novel approaches, novel ways of doing things to unlock the potential that can actually make transport work more efficiently in a number of locations. So on the right-hand side, you'll see that we've used the transport technology readiness levels, TRLs they're called. And if you look through that scale, we're focused very much on those projects that are in the level 2 to 4. So these are areas around proof of concept, if you like. So if you look at TRL1, it will be very much around basic science, that often you'll see at very basic research in universities. But as you're trying to then apply that to levels 2 to 4 is where the focus for TRIID would be. But of course, if you've got technologies that are closer to delivery, these are still part of the scope of this call. Next slide, please. And in terms of the budget, we're looking to fund somewhere around 10 to 14 projects. We're looking to say that for small grants, which are up to £25,000, there are about 8 to 10 of these. And for the larger grants, which are over 25,000, but up to a maximum of £50,000, there'll be 2 to 4 grants funded. Of course, this depends on the funding from FCDO and the budget envelope that we have for this grant competition. So what we're saying is that the challenge and solutions must be applicable to low or middle income countries in sub-Saharan Africa or South Asia, and collaborations with companies and LMICs are encouraged. Next slide. So in terms of the research themes, we have several research themes that we are highlighting here. And what we would say is that these are indicative, and you can actually, if you find that your interest, your research theme does not fit one of these, they are still in scope because, as you'll see, the last one that we have is other. So this is quite all-encompassing. But what we're trying to help here is to try to get you to think through some of the research themes that are of interest to the HVT program and to FCDO, how your research might, align with either one or more of these research themes. So for instance, we've focused very much on enabling access to climate finance, which can include the development of new business models or cost models. We're looking at the decarbonization of transport, which can cover a wide range of issues, looking at climate adaptation and mitigation, including the development, for instance, of a carbon decarbonization index that can help set the criteria to benchmark one country against another, for instance. The digitalization of transport, we're seeing a real growth in this area. So the development of novel digital tools to improve access or improve mobility of goods and people. And we're seeing things around multi and intermodality of transport. This will include areas like mobility as a service. E-mobility and decarbonization of transport are also part of this call. Enabling policy regulation development that can positively impact transport in low to middle income countries can also be considered. One of the key areas we're seeing is in the area of transport is large swathes of data, often from areas outside of transport, but together with transport. So these areas around benefits of data integration that can help improve process flows can also be considered as part of this call. So if you've got a technology or innovation in transport, including innovative transport services or policies, these can be considered. And as I said at the start, if you've got a technology that is innovative, that you think can be applied to address some of the challenges faced in transport, especially in low to middle income countries, then those that we'd like to hear from you regarding those. The next slide, please. Alongside these, the HVT program has considered a number of cross-cutting themes, and these can include areas of road safety, accessibility, inclusivity, and of course, the areas of health and well-being. And the example I'd use often is one of, say, in transport, we have a number of emissions, poor air quality, things to improve air quality, for instance, could be seen as a cross-cutting theme. So this could sit quite happily with something that, say, is one of the key research themes for you, for instance, say, the decarbonization of transport. So you could look at a main theme together with a cross-cutting theme. And we'd like to see that integration between those two areas in any sort of application that you put forward. Next slide, please. So I will now hand over to my colleague Savitri to take you through the application process. Yet again, I can see that there's some activity in the Q&A session. I'll encourage you to please use that and we'll address those at the end. But over to you now, Savitri.
Thanks very much, Neil. Okay, so to take you through to the applications process. So we require you to make some preparations before you start trying out the application system. So first of all, go into the link that you've got to the applications page, and we encourage you to first go to the instructions. There you will be able to find the specification document, the guidance and the FAQs document, the due diligence, and there are two versions of the due diligence document. So there's one for the independent consultant and there's one for the others. So make sure you have the correct form. And if you are with the independent consultant, you will have to add in additional attachments to it, such as your passport photo and your degrees and other qualifications. You also need to download the grant offer letter and funding agreement, which is the terms and conditions. Have a look at that, make sure you understand what they are. Once you've got those documents, you can then start and go to the bottom, which allows you to go to the main screen, and then you can launch the application. Jerome will do a demo, so don't worry about it. And we encourage you to trial the form. We encourage you to look at the questions so that you understand what is expected of you, because you will be expected to complete this in one go. but you can try this form as many times as you want, just do not submit. With the section G6 questions, we encourage you to copy those questions into a Word or another text document, and then we encourage you to prepare your answers in the Word, because this is the one that's going to be requiring a lot of your time in developing the answers to these questions. This is basically what forms your proposal in your application. Alongside that, we are giving you lots of Q&As information. So as I've already mentioned, you've got the guidance document that will talk you through how you answer each of those questions. We've got the FAQs, the frequently asked questions and answers there. You can use that. There's obviously this webinar where you've got the opportunity to ask some questions and listen to other people's questions and answers, and that should hopefully help you with answering as well. And then finally, we will also give you a link at the end where you can send through questions that you've thought of afterwards, so you can send emails to us. Now, the final steps obviously is for you to launch the application, but for you to actually complete the form. And so we're suggesting to you can add in or complete the rest of the questions as you go along, but copy in the answers from Q6, because this is the one that's got a lot of detail in there. We're also reminding you to make sure that you include all the attachments, for example, the DDQ, and if you're an independent consultant, the additional attachments that are required. They all need to be in one document format, one PDF attachment. We also have two questions, question 2 and question 3, that require you to attach some documents as well. So please make sure you do that. Again, they can only be single file attachments and in PDF, and both have limits. So please be aware of the number of page limits for both those questions. Now, if you are submitting a proposal or an application for a large project, so over 25,000 to up to £50,000, then automatically you will be required to add in a cash flow as well. And once you've attached all of these documents, once you've got all the answers completed, please make sure you do submit the application. There is a deadline, and the deadline for this is the 20th of March, 2023, 1700 hours GMT. So please be aware of that. And we recommend that you don't leave it to the last minute, just in case of any technical issues. Next slide, please. So how do you create good applications? So the critical thing is you must, first of all, have an innovative idea in transport. When you start completing these applications, sections A to 5 and H are very important, because they still provide us with important information that we use to try and determine what your background is and how does that affect the application. But really, when we get down to it, section G is really your proposal to us. So questions 1 and 6 in G, they are very important, and they are where we will be scoring. That's what we are going to be assessing. So what consists of a good quality application? Well, first thing is read the questions carefully. Then you need to try and consult the notes for each of the question in the guidance document. We've laid it out very, very simply, but if you use the guidance document, you've got what is the question actually asking for, and you've got that guidance available question by question. Then you need to consult the assessment criteria. So that's available partly on the online form and also in the guidance and the FAQs document. There's also some further guidance available in the specification document. It's recommended that you read all of these and you have them downloaded so you can refer to them as you're going along preparing your answers. Next slide. Okay, so another idea, what consists of good application form? Well, we need your project to actually make an impact. So to do that, we feel you've got to have a good variety of outputs and dissemination. So here we've just given you some ideas. So yes, we do expect you to deliver a report as a minimum. And if you've got a report that's going to have some confidential element, we need another format of a report which can be publicized. But in addition to that, we recommend you think of creative way where you could create more impact for your project. So it could be also supporting with a guidance document. We've had a couple of projects that have also delivered videos, and they've been quite useful in understanding the project and the benefits of it. You could be publishing articles in journals. We also encourage you to present your project ideas at webinars and conferences. You could think about creating some infographics that could be separated, or it could be included within your report, or both. You could think about perhaps clarifying steps for a process, because innovation doesn't have to be a product, it could be a process. You could think about how to influence leaders, political leaders. So you could be thinking about policy briefs, and you could be even thinking about negotiating directly with government officials just to try and make better impact of your project. So these are ideas how you could improve the quality of your project, and this relates directly to question 4 of section G. Next slide, please. So we have a very transparent assessment process. You will find how things are going to be assessed clearly laid out in the criteria which forms part of the guidance and the FAQs document. So please read through that. But generally, there's going to be a 2-step process. The first step, what we call triage, will apply to all applications. We will be using your summary, and we will be looking at question 2. Question 2 is the one on innovation and approach. And obviously, this is a project, a grant funding for innovation. So hence, we are emphasizing our approach to the innovations. We're going to focus on that. The results must score over 50% in the triage to get to the next stage. Next slide, please. So step 2 of the assessment process is going to be a full-scale assessment of all 6 questions. But initially, those applications that have passed at the triage stage will enter the step 2 of the process. At this point, we'll have 2 or more independent reviewers, and these will be a mixture of those from academia and industry experts, and they will assess and score questions 1 to 6 in section G. So funding decision will not just be based on the scoring itself, it will take a portfolio approach and be based on the themes and project areas of your ideas, and also how well they are geographically spread. For example, we may have 2 SMEs decided that they've come up with this idea, and coincidentally, both of them have come up with 2 very similar ideas. At that point, we are going to be looking at the scores to see which one scores better. Even though they both may have scored very well, we will be kind to the public purse. We will not fund very similar projects. We'll try and spread it so we're covering a variety of different areas. However, the final decision will rest with the FCDO. Next slide, please. So in this, these are the questions that are in section G, question 1, 2, and 3. And you will notice that they have got weighting factors. So these 6 questions are weighted out of 10, have weighting factors of 10. So the first question you'll see is important because it's got a weighting factor of 2. This is the project purpose. So what we recommend is where there are high weighting factors, i.e. more than 1, we recommend you spend extra time on this because these are considered more important in making the decision for us. So project purpose and links to the theme of TRIID 2023 Open Call. For example, we will be asking you these questions like, What is the challenge being addressed by the proposed project? What is the relevance to HVT program themes? And is there evidence of the need for this research and project? Is there a link between the project outputs and addressing the transport challenge clear? Is it clear? So these kind of things, these are questions that you need to consider in the answer for that question. And you need to make sure you answer every single question on there. And it has a score of 2. The next question, which is approach and innovation, is even more important. Hence, we've decided to include it in the triad stage. It has a weighting factor of 3. So you need to spend even more time to try and make sure you answer all the questions in there. Obviously, we're encouraging you to attach some documents as well, some diagrams and documents to try and illustrate and demonstrate the innovation and your approach. We've allowed up to 3 A4 size PDF documents. Any additional pages will be disregarded. Question 3, also we allow you to add in 2 A4 size PDF documents. This is to support the project management and team information. Next slide, please. And then question 4, 5, and 6. So potential research uptake and impact, that has a weighting factor of 2. Hence, I discussed to you earlier on about the different styles of reporting, more than just a report. You could add in other styles like having steps, etc. Thinking about dissemination, those are important to have impact. So we need you to complete that side, and that's why it has a higher weighting factor. We also want to take on board the impact you're going to have with the LMIC. So how is the uptake of this, and how and how many LMICs are included in your project, and how are you going to upscale it to other LMICs, those kind of things. And if is there co-funding? So it's still very important, and it carries a weighting factor of 1. The final question is about your project finances, and you will see when Jerome demonstrates you that you will just need to add in a few figures, and you'll be able to calculate and get the budget automatically calculating the costs in there. But one of the things that we are looking for is value for money. So bear that in mind when you come to the costings. It's important still, it carries a value of 1, a weighting factor of 1. Next slide, please. So I'm now going to pass you over to Jerome, and he's going to talk you through how do you get to the portal, and he's going to do a live demonstration for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sveti, and thank you, Neil. Okay, hopefully you should now be able to see the portal on the screen. So for those who've participated in previous funding rounds, this is one of the changes in the funding round. We're doing online applications this time. So if you do click on the link, or when you click on the link that has been sent in the chat, this is the screen that you will see. Very simple front screen. We basically have 3 options here for you. There's a link to the high volume transport site that will take you through the Transport Links website. Given you're all here, I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you're not, it is certainly well worth a visit. In the middle, we have the launch, where we launch the application. When it comes time to either practice or to actually submit your application, this is where you'll go, and we'll show you this in a second. And then finally, of course, we have the instructions over here, and we do encourage you to read the instructions first. So we'll click on the instructions. Okay, so in the instructions, many of the things that Neil and Sveti have been talking about already are here. So this is one of the places you can go for a lot of this information. So the documents that we've been talking about, they're available here for download. The grant specification, the guidance and the FAQ, and the grant funding agreement are all here and available for download. We will, of course, when the webinars are completed, make copies of the webinar available here as well. So we're aiming to do that by the end of this week. There's some notes here. As Sviti said, there are points where you can add additional documentation or where you are required to add additional documentation. So these are spelt out here, which points you can add attachments. Please note, for example, in section G, question 2, which is the innovation question, you are allowed to attach up to 3 sides of A4 in diagrams, figures, and tables. These should be uploaded as a single file. And this is throughout the document, throughout the application process. Question 3, you are allowed 2 pages, please, just as a single file. Further down here, you are required, as noted, to upload the due diligence questionnaire. Copies of the questionnaire are available here. There is a copy for independent consultants, and there is a copy for all other parties and partners. As Sviti said, if you are an independent consultant, you are required to upload some additional information, specifically being a copy of your passport page and your qualifications. We'll step through section G, which is the main scoring section when we get to the proposal. There's information about the assessment process. Please note the deadline. It is 5 o'clock in the afternoon GMT on the 20th of March. Applications submitted after this deadline obviously will not be assessed. Your application will be timestamped when it is submitted. Please, we encourage you not to leave it to the last minute, not to leave it to the last day. We encourage you to, when you have time, to go into the application process, have a look around, play with it, do some data entry, but don't submit. And we suggest that you leave yourself at least an hour to an hour and a half to upload the information to the application and check it before you submit. Please note the system, I think Sviti said this, the system is not designed for use on mobile devices, and you'll see that when we get the application form, so please use a PC or a laptop. We'll go back to the main page and we will launch the application. Just click on Launch Application and you will see the application form. Now, the application form, again, there's some basic instructions here. Again, there's places you can download the grant specification template, guidance and FAQ, but you should have already downloaded and read them by the time you get this far. Similarly, reminders of the deadline. There are 2 email addresses, and we will put these up towards the end of the webinar. There is an email address if you have technical issues with the portal, and there is a general email address for queries about the application process. Once you get into the application form, they are all questions you are going to expect, and they're all obvious questions. We're looking for the project title, the lead organisation name. We're looking for the main theme, secondary themes, cross-cutting issues, project size. Then we start to get into how you found out about the TRIID competition. So these are all questions you will anticipate. You will note up here, we have lots of different ways, or not lots of different ways, but several different ways of entering information. Project title is going to be straight up text. So this will be some form of research proposal. Lead organisation name or the independent consultant name, again, text. Main theme is a drop-down. Secondary themes are tick boxes. Cross-cutting issues, you can choose more than one. So there are a number of different ways that you will be asked to enter information. So we do encourage you to go in and have a look and try it and make sure you're comfortable with it. The observant among you may have noticed there's nice little red stars beside some of the fields. That means these are compulsory fields. So obviously we need a project title. We need the lead organisation name. We need the main theme. So anywhere there's a red star, it is a compulsory field. As you go through the form, we get down to how you found out about the TRIID competition, then we get into the lead company information, section B. Section C is the lead organisation. And there you'll notice we go straight to section E. And that's because the form will change depending on some of your answers. As an example, up here, B6, it says, are you collaborating with another company? If you say yes, then section D will appear. So this is a good reason to make sure you go in and practice, because unless you answer yes to that question, you're not going to see partner organisation details. So similar, so that gives you an opportunity to show partner 1. If you have another partner, yes, you'll get partner 2, and so on and so forth. So please go in, trial some of the questions, trial some of the entering answers. As we get down towards section G, which is the key part of the proposal, as VT said, this is the section that is scored. Everything else is important. We ask all the other questions for very good reasons, but this is the section that is scored, is section G. In this section, we have here the public project summary. There's character limits. So that is based on 250 words approximately, and is obviously a compulsory field. Scoring criteria is here. Again, please make sure you've read that well before you get to this point in the process. When we get down into the questions, and we'll look at question 2. Question 2 is the innovation question. It is the one that scores the most points. It's the one that's used for triage. You will see here, it's got the maximum of characters of 13,000, plus this is one that allows you to upload a file. So you can type your question here, your answer here, and then there's an opportunity to upload the file here. With all of these questions, as Sveti said, we encourage you to actually type them somewhere else in a text editor, in Microsoft Word or somewhere else, and make sure you're happy with the response, and then cut and paste them in when it comes time to submit the application. When we start to get down to question 4, and you'll see this elsewhere, this is the research uptake. Sveti spoke about this before, about outputs and dissemination activities. You will note here that the proposed outputs, please note up to 5 outputs below. There's only a spot for 1 at the moment. And this is just simply because it will only give you the opportunity after you've actually submitted an output. So once you've put 1 in, you'll get an option for a second one, and then a third, and then a fourth. So when you come in, don't panic because there's only a spot for 1. As you start to fill things in, things will make themselves available for you. Similarly, when we come down to the project finance section, in here, same for personnel costs, you can complete for up to 7 personnel. So you can put in people's names, their position, work in ops. There's an opportunity to put in the daily fee rate, and then the number of days, and it will automatically calculate for you, as Sveti said. Down to the due diligence section, please make sure you upload the due diligence questionnaire, and as we indicated, the passport photo page and the degree or higher certificates if you are an independent consultant. And then finally, at the end here, there's declarations and confirmations. We ask that you confirm that you have read the grant application assessment criteria, the guidance and FAQ, seen the webinar slides and the recording, that you accept the terms of the grant offer letter and funding agreement, and that you've uploaded the due diligence questionnaire and supporting documentation. Once you're complete, we ask you to make the declaration, name, position, and the date, 23. Now, the observant amongst you will note that I have not filled in all the questions with the red stars. And so if you miss a compulsory question, the system will tell you. So it says here on the tab application where we are, the field lead organization name is required. So now that happens to you, go back up, have a look for lead organization name, fill it in, and then resubmit. Please, when you're filling it in, take your time, make sure you go back and check all your answers, make sure you're comfortable with your answers, and then submit. When you do submit, you'll get an email confirmation within a couple of minutes confirming that your application has been submitted. And then within 2 business days, we will send you a full PDF of your application, including the timestamp when we received it. You do need to sit down and do this in one go. So please There's not an opportunity to save. So please sit down and when you are ready to submit and work through it methodically. I think that's all I have to say about the application process. So thank you all and good luck.
Thanks, Jerome. It's back to me now. Okay, so now to talk about the finance steps and dates and deadlines. Next slide, please. So in the payment options, these are by project size. So if you've selected the small funding, so up to 25,000, then the way you'll be paid is 30% when you have your first meeting, which is the progress meeting, where you discuss with the technical lead your methodology. We have assessed your skeleton report, which will be things like including your background approach, those kind of things that you already put much of the details in this application. So we need a skeleton report to be approved, your methodology, and that point we can then start consider paying you 30% once you've also submitted the statement of grant usage and receipts to prove that. So that's the first stage. The 70% will be paid once your final report is approved by us, and then obviously you've got the documents as well, the finance documents, a statement of grant usage and receipts submitted as well. With the large scale projects, so these are the ones over 25,000 up to 50,000. With those, what we're going to do is look at the cash flow, and then we will come up with milestone payments that are tailored to your cash flow. So the next stage that we need to get you to do is to make sure that you've got contracts approval. So obviously we need to make sure that your first progress report is approved by us in your first progress meeting. But secondly, we need to make sure that there is a signed copy of the funding agreement. We've got the due diligence questionnaire complete and approved as well from you. So all of these need to be in place. But this is where, if you are looking at partnering or looking at having subcontractors, you need to start as soon as you've got the go-ahead from us that we are looking to fund you. Please put those areas in place, the contracts with your partners and subcontractors. Obviously, you will have put these the amounts of money and everything into your budget, which we will have considered the proposal level. So those need to be in place. Then what we need is for you to submit the grant usage form. This is submitted each time you make a claim. And this form, the statement of grant usage, it's an Excel spreadsheet. It is a continuous spreadsheet. So when you are looking for payment at 30%, you will start off and you will likely have costs up to 30%, and at that point you will be claiming and you'll be applying. When you come to the 70% claim, what you do is you'd start with that 30% and you'd add in the 70%, so you'd make your 100% claim, and if you've saved some money, maybe slightly less than that. But the other thing is we need your receipts and invoices as evidence, so please make sure you do keep hold of them and keep them and scan them quite early on, because sometimes some of those receipts do lose some of the printing and become faded. So please try and scan them at your earliest convenience. And these need to be inserted in the statement of grant usage. But don't worry, because we will be training you. So next slide. So this is just to assure you that we're going to be hosting a training webinar for the successful grantees, and then you can invite your finance contacts who will be helping you complete the statement of grant usage as well. And this is so to make you familiar with what is expected of us, so that we can speed up the process for it. Next slide, please. Okay, so the dates and the deadlines. So the competition was launched 23rd of January. We've already had one webinar this morning, and we've got this one now. And we are going to have a Q&A session, and I can see that we've already got some questions in the inbox and Q&A at the bottom, which is great. The competition deadline is 20th of March 2023. The assessment process will be immediately as soon as the deadline starts. So from the 20th of March up to the 27th April, we'll do the two processes that we've said, the triage and the full scale of assessment. The notification of funding will be the first week in May 2023, and we will be doing the initiation meetings from the 1st to the 10th of May. The official start project date is 8th of May, and it should be 2023, but it's been missed, but it's 2023, not 2024. But what we would do is we would say to the grantees that they can actually start their projects immediately after they've had their initiation meetings. So the project deadlines for this small, it is the draft, we expect it on the 30th of November 2023 and the final on the 8th of January 2024. So we're allowing roughly 6 months for them to deliver the projects. For the larger projects, we're allowing twice the amount of time. So the draft report, we're expecting around 15th of May, and then the final version of the report around 30th of June of 2024. So next slide, please. So as Jerome mentioned with the emails, if you do have any technical issues, we do have an email address for this. So if you can please send to those, then Jerome and his team can deal with those. For any others, such as finance, processes, etc., please send to HVT procurement, and it will come down to me to come and deal with those kinds of issues. And at this point, I think Ben will now put in the link to the website in the chat, so you can actually have a look at that. And we will now start taking the questions.
So I think, so from one of the first questions we have in the Q&A, I encourage you to keep adding questions. We'll get through what we can. The first one looks at, is it focused on high volume transport only? Do you think low volume transport research can apply?
So, we don't use rigid definitions for high and low volume transport. So I think the key aspect is looking at the theme that you're going to go under. Are you addressing one of the transport challenges that we've highlighted, and looking at the innovation that you'll provide? So I think that will be more of the focus than saying it's high volume or low volume.
And then two sort of similar questions here. One is about ASEAN countries in scope, and also about Latin America. Is it okay to be applicable here?
So yet again, as we've said, people can apply from anywhere. However, those are not in those preferred regions that we've spoken about, and not all countries are in those preferred regions. So they would need to partner with a country in those regions to be given a higher priority possibly, or they would have to show how their technology or the solution could be applicable in those countries. So we're not excluding people from doing it, but they will have to demonstrate that.
Okay, great. So I think the next one will be, is there an opportunity to informally assess if an idea that would fall under the other sort of category would align to FCDO's strategy before a formal submission?
So unfortunately, we don't have the resources to do that on case by case even. So I think we've given indicative thematic areas. I think we've given quite a lot of information on the areas we're looking at in terms of the type of innovation, the level of innovation. So I think if you've got something that's transport related and you've got something that you think is innovative or novel, then please apply.
This is more, I think, more sort of contractual. Like, is there an option? Should they complete the due diligence again if they've already developed research and contracts with DT Global as an independent consultant?
So I would say to you that drop that question into the HVT email address at the end, because I'm not quite sure how long it is. The only thing I'm going to say to you is your application will not allow you to exit and submit unless you have something included in there. We may be able to use a previous form if it's still valid, but if I was you, I would drop the email yourself to the HVT procurement to check if you can resubmit a previous one.
Can individual consultants apply for large grants?
Yes, so we're not limiting the limits of the grant competition to independents or to organizations. However, there are additional, as Savitri and Jerome showed, there is additional data that they'll need to share, and they'll also have to provide more information as well.
Great. How does the application specifically define innovation above and beyond products and processes? For example, regarding non-electric bicycles, would processes to expand access to bicycles by the poor align?
So as I said, we take a very broad definition of these things. So if you can demonstrate that what you're doing is somewhat markedly different, I would say not somewhat, it's markedly different to current state of the art or practice, and how the process that you're going to implement will increase access, say, for bicycle use or whatever else it might be, then yes, that would be in scope.
Great. Is any weighting given to the size of the business opportunity or employment generated by the proposal?
So not directly is what I would say. I would say that you can see that the weighting, and Savitri's gone through this in some detail, is focused very much on the challenge you plan to meet and on the innovation. But when you're looking at things like research uptake and so forth, those are some of those areas that, depending on your company, that you might be able to draw some of that out into those areas. But specifically to the question asked, the answer unfortunately is no. But
and are there any?
If you have anything to add? Okay, carry on.
Yeah. And are there any limits on day rates, noting an overall need for value for money?
So, Savitri, do you want to take this?
Sure, I'll take that. So although there are no limits on day rates, what we're expecting is you to consider the market rates. So market rates could be by your role and also within the country that you're applying from. We are looking for value for money because these projects are going to be funded from the public purse. So we do have a duty of care to the public to provide value for money.
I think this is a more procedural. Can we submit the answer to question 2 in the PDF?
So yeah, I would say that if you felt that you could answer that fully in just the number of character limits that you have, then you could do that. You have an opportunity to include 3 further pages as a PDF to actually demonstrate what your technology has to offer. Then that is up to the applicant. But of course, this will all be used in that assessment process. It'll be used in that triage, the initial triage that we talked about, and of course, obviously in the full assessment as well.
What happens to funding in the event that a partner organization requires payment in advance?
So what I was going to say is in that situation, assuming that you are either applying for a large project, then we would take into consideration your cash flow. There is something that we do consider though, because we are quite careful in terms of any advance payments. Sometimes it's necessary to deliver certain parts of work, but we try and limit it just to try and reduce the risk, because we need to make sure that there will be, delivery will occur. So we would take into consideration that in that. If you are applying for a smaller grant, this is something that you could put it into. There's a section that allows you to mention all of this. You will get payment up to 30%, but if there's other issues or other situations or a special situation, you can put in there and discuss with us in that way.
Yeah, and we can deal with this on a case-by-case basis.
Exactly.
Awesome. I think, is it mandatory to have at least 2 countries or more as collaborator? Is it possible to propose in a single country, single lower middle income country?
Yes, it is. So you don't have to have 2 or more. And this is why the form, as Jerome has demonstrated, is quite adaptable to exactly the partners that you have and what you're trying to address.
Cool. And yeah, and I think we might have answered 1 or 2, but we will be making a recording of this session available online as well in the coming days.
I was just going to say, sorry, Ben, I was just seeing a question which says they're having IT challenges, and this is exactly why we say to you, please try it. If you are having IT challenges on the form, please send an email to Jerome with your query, and then we will try and address that as best we can. Sorry, I'll let you carry on now.
No worries. I suppose, is there any criteria for selecting a small or a large project?
So this is up to the applicant to decide on their project, the challenge they face, and the timeline. So the timelines you see are quite different between the small grants and the large grants as well. So this is purely based on the applicant. The criteria we've clearly spelt out in a very transparent way that we'll be using for both of those. And they will have to be commensurate with the amount of monies that they're asking.
Great. I think a couple of people asking the same, can an organization submit more than 1 proposal or application?
So the answer to that, unfortunately, is no, because we're trying to have as many different companies and different ideas coming through. So we're just limiting to 1. So whether that's a small grant or a large grant, people have to make a choice about where they wish to apply.
Okay. I think this question is, can you make a minor title for a project title you recommend? I'm not sure.
So could you say that again?
It's from Mabratu Delegan. Can you make a minor title for the project title you recommend? I'm not sure what that might mean.
I'm not 100% sure. I
Maybe,
I had seen a question before my system threw me out. There was a question on IPR, and I thought that might be worth addressing. So I think there was a question about who owns the IP. So they're in the documents that you've seen. There's a grant funding agreement piece to it, and there's quite a section on IPR in that. But broadly speaking, we say any project specific IPR created under the project shall be owned by the grant recipient, but FCDO will reserve the right to require to be granted a license to use that in low to middle income countries, but without further cost because they've funded this work. But I think that is something that if people are very concerned with, they can look at that in that grant funding agreement document.
Okay, great. Where are we? Could we clarify the specific African countries that are the FCDO's focus? I believe we have that on a slide.
So we have that on the slide, and people have access to that. As I said, these are not limited to those countries. So if you're from LMIC in sub-Saharan Africa, you can still apply or you can still partner with them.
Someone is asking if they're a lecturer in a university, can they apply individually or should it come through the university?
So it will depend on how they choose to do that. They can do it as an independent, but they will have to provide all of the details that Savitha and Jerome have highlighted, or they can do it through their organization.
Cool. Someone said they saw safety in the subject topics. Could they add in climate and environment, or would that come under?
So, the thing is that climate environment, when we're talking about the decarbonization of transport as a major theme, then you could see climate action as being part of that. The road safety was taken as a cross-cutting theme, but if you're taking, yet again, the areas that they raise, but through health and well-being, I've highlighted the issues of, say, air quality under that. That will also come in under those themes that they're talking about. So I think either directly as a theme, which we've already mentioned, as other, or as a cross-cutting theme, I think those would certainly be applicable.
And also, can a cross-cutting theme be the main focus of the project?
As we have other, yes, it can.
Cool. And someone is asking, what is the definition of a low middle-income country, and what is the preferred consortium composition? E.g., a consultant not in a lower middle-income country and an academic government organization in a lower middle.
So we don't have a preference. I think the focus over here is about people showing that they have the ability, that they've partnered with the right people to deliver the aims of the project. And the key aspect of this is around having an innovative approach to tackle some of the challenges faced in transport in low to middle income countries. So we don't have a perceived view of who would be the right person to deliver that. I think what we will do is look purely at the applications received, the evidence provided, and we will make a judgment based on that.
Cool. So it's like, can they develop a proposal based on developing monitoring and evaluation framework for sustainable transport? I assume yes.
The answer is yes,
Yeah.
but they will have to show relevance and to show how this is innovative and how this differs from other projects of a similar nature.
I think this next one might be speedy. Will applying as an individual consultant result in receiving payments treated as taxable income that we should account for, or would be considered some kind of gift? I suppose that would depend on the situation.
I think it will depend on country as well. So there may be tax laws that are different from country to country. What we're going to do is just provide everybody a grant, and then how it's treated as income will depend, like I said, from country to country.
And then so I think asking, are there limits to any travel budgets as part of a proposal?
So we don't actually have a specific limit, but it does need to be justified because, like I said, we're looking for value for money, so they can't be huge. But we do understand that some projects may require you to travel to an LMIC, but you may be based in the north, and you may need to do the travel to try and make that work happen as such. So we are allowing for that, but again, it has to be reasonable, has to provide still value for money, and it has to be justified as to why that travel is needed.
And, I think that's a very good point. I think it's not what we will allow and not allow in that respect. I think it's a question of, can it be justified for a project of £25,000 or up to £50,000, and proportionate to that, is that travel justified? And that's something that they'll have to demonstrate.
I think so. I think how many individual projects will be funded? And I think
so. We've run through that already. So we said somewhere between 10 to 14, and we'll have a mixed portfolio approach, which will be both in terms of size, thematic area, and geography.
Cool. I suppose when we talk about lower middle income countries, do we have a specific list of what countries those are?
So there's the definitions that exist based on the income of that country, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I think it's something like $1,300 per annum or something like this. I can't remember, but these are the sort of set, most probably by the UN or FCDO. You'll find those, I think. And if yet again, if this is something we could address, maybe we'll do it as an FAQ when we tidy these up.
So I think new technology has been mentioned throughout the presentation. Is skills development and knowledge transfer activities towards the thematic areas part of the scope if these skills result in a measurable change in that thematic area? The application of these skills are a novel approach towards solving the problem.
Exactly. And so I focus a lot on technology because it's in the title of what we're trying to do. But I think, we've talked very much about approaches, processes, and definitely the skills and capacity sort of issues that have been highlighted will certainly be in scope.
Is this a research-oriented grant, or is there a preference for implementation-oriented proposals? So,
it could be either. And I think it'll depend, yet again, we go back to those TRL levels. I've highlighted TRLs 2 to 4 as part of TRIID, but we can certainly look at to move closer towards implementation or moving towards in that direction.
Cool. I think
And there's one question that I see that you've kind of jumped, which
Yeah.
is definition of LMICs in the documentation. Yes, if you go into the guidance and the FAQs, there is a link which will give you the LMICs, and also the preferred list is already in this presentation. So both those definitions are there.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. I think we've gone through. I think if anyone wants to add any more questions, of course, you can obviously ask questions to the HVT procurement email address if people would like to go through that. That is, if we haven't answered anything today or want some more clarity, feel free to go through to that email address.
Do you want to launch your poll, Ben?
Yes, so we've just launched a specific poll about this session. If it was useful, if there's things we could improve for the next one, feel free to add in answers to the poll. That would be great. And of course, you can reach out to us if there are any further questions.
But thank you for your attention and for the questions that we received as well. It shows the interest, and we hope that you'll be encouraged to apply for these TRIID grants, and we look forward to reading your applications. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
And a good day wherever you are.